"Oh, is that you, Gina?" while having coffee with my family at a cafe. I turned around at the sound of that voice, and there was my ex-husband, Ryan. And next to him was Alyssa, the woman who took this man from me. Huh? What, you got married? I just glared at him in silence. Then he said, "Oh, I see. Is the infertile defective still single? Are you planning to remarry with someone who also has children from a previous marriage? You two would be a good match." Ryan seemed to find this very amusing. I slammed the table and stood up. "Excuse me? Who did you say is infertile? What, isn't that the case?" "Just kidding again." Ryan laughed mockingly. We felt sick and left the cafe. At that moment, two girls who seemed to be daughters passed by. "Miss Anderson," one of the girls shouted as she ran towards me, panting. "I'm Megan, your daughter. I have something very important to tell you." She was desperate to get her point across. "My name is Gina Anderson. I'm 45 years old. I live with my husband Nathan, who is 3 years younger than me, our daughter Sarah, and my in-laws, making us a family of 5. Nathan is a chef, and I work in a sort of sales job. Both of us tend to be workaholics. I sometimes worry that this makes Sarah feel somewhat lonely, as she is only 12. However, my in-laws live with us and are understanding of our work, treating Sarah kindly and sometimes strictly, which allows us to dedicate ourselves to our jobs. And on the rare days off we have together, Nathan showcases his excellent cooking. Sarah envies his skills, and whenever possible, she learns cooking from Nathan. I could never have imagined 17 years ago that such happy days would come my way. Nathan is my second husband. I divorced 17 years ago. My ex-husband was Ryan Irving, a senior colleague who was 5 years older. In my 20s, I moved departments from sales to general affairs after getting married, continuing to work while being a housewife. Back then, I thought we had a reasonably good marriage, or so I believed. But one day, out of the blue, Ryan told me he wanted a divorce. Why all of a sudden? Stunned, I stood before the divorce papers he thrust in front of me, not understanding what was happening. Then, Ryan's expression turned more serious than ever before. "You know, we've never been able to have kids, right?" I was shocked. Ryan had never mentioned such a thing since we got married. However, his mother often pressed the issue. I had lived with my in-laws for the 3 years of our marriage, and was constantly nagged about when we would have children. But I thought I had managed to keep Ryan from noticing his mother's attitude. I was also concerned about our inability to have children. However, I felt that rushing into fertility treatments wouldn't immediately change our situation. Things would happen when they could. That was what I believed. But I was naive. "Are you divorcing me because I can't have children?" "That's not the only reason." At that moment, I had a bad feeling. "Hey, remember Alyssa?" "Of course I do. She was in my sales department." "What about her?" Just as a thought crossed my mind, Ryan spoke up. "Well, Alyssa is pregnant with my child now." "What?" I was at a loss for words at that moment. This news was completely unexpected to me. I hadn't known that Ryan was having an affair, let alone with Alyssa, my former junior. "I can't accept that you want a divorce just because you have a child with someone else," I argued with all my might. But Ryan calmly said this. "But Mom agrees with it." At that moment, I realized where the discussion had originated from. When I asked to confirm, "Right, I'm supporting him and Alyssa," my mother-in-law answered simply. "Why is that? Doesn't it mean that Ryan cheated? How can you tolerate that?" "Yes, I can forgive that." I was lost for words at her response. "Because you haven't shown any signs of having children." I've been worried about it all this time. That is. Indeed, from her perspective, it could be seen as a concern. After all, you two didn't say you weren't trying to have kids. So, it must be a problem on your side. Ryan continued. See, I told you. Mom wants to see her grandchild. And since there was no sign of that happening with you, it's natural, isn't it? Saying this, Ryan presented the divorce papers to me, who was stunned in disbelief. I quickly resigned myself to the fact that I no longer had a place anywhere. Signed the divorce papers. Looking back, I should have demanded a proper division of assets and compensation at that time. But at that moment, I was not in a state to make rational decisions. At work, the news of the divorce and its reasons spread quickly. Meanwhile, Alyssa quit her job and seemed to easily settle into being a housewife upon getting pregnant and giving birth. As for me, instead of being seen as the unfortunate woman who was cheated on, rumors spread that I was unattractive and had stolen her husband. Eventually, I resigned from the company. I could no longer bear the curious looks and gossip. And for a while, I holed up in a small room in a place where I had moved. But one can't live on nothing. As someone not particularly skilled in cooking, I went out on a whim. Drawn by the scent of stew from a small shop, I lingered over the menu for a long time until the cook asked, "What would you like?" It seems I had been looking at the menu for quite a long time. At that moment, I realized how tremendously tired I felt. As I ate, tears and sniffles involuntarily followed. Yet, the cook quietly placed extra napkins in front of me as I continued eating in silence. That cook was Nathan, my current husband. After that, I began visiting the restaurant frequently and eventually started dating Nathan. Despite being older and divorced, our feelings for each other did not change, and we got married. Soon after our marriage, I discovered I was pregnant with our daughter, Sarah. Unlike my former mother-in-law, my new in-laws were very kind. I am truly grateful to my current in-laws, who cherish me like their own daughter as my family is far away. They even said if I ever wanted to work because staying at home all the time was depressing, I should do so without hesitation. I started helping out in the restaurant where Nathan worked, taking over the accounting part, which the owner disliked. Years later, the owner fell ill and retired, and Nathan, whose skills had always been recognized, took over the restaurant. Over the next decade, our work and parenting went smoothly. One day, Nathan, Sarah, and I were cafe hopping. For Nathan and me, it was half fun, half study. We discussed things like how nice the menu was, or whether some places should consider smaller sizes. "Hey, is that you, Gina?" I turned around at the sound of that voice, and there was Ryan, a man I had nearly forgotten. And next to him was, "Ah, it really is Ms. Anderson. Remember me? It's Alyssa." A woman, perhaps unbecomingly young at heart, calling out in a cutesy voice. Alyssa was there. She must be 40 by now, already middle-aged, yet dressed and made up in a way that felt a bit out of place. "Long time no see," I replied in a stiff voice. Nathan and Sarah looked a bit anxious hearing my tone. Then Ryan pressed on. "Huh? What, you got married?" I glared at him silently. Then he said, "Oh, I see. Is the infertile defective still single? Are you planning to remarry with someone who also has children from a previous marriage? You two would be a good match." Ryan seemed to find this very amusing. Nathan and Sarah looked bewildered by his off-target remarks. I slammed the table and stood up. "Excuse me? Who did you say is infertile?" "Oh? Ms. Anderson, why are you suddenly getting angry? What, isn't that the case? You married someone with a child because you can't have your own. What is wrong with these people?" Pointing to Nathan and Sarah, I firmly clarified. That's not true. I married this man a long time ago, and this child is my own. Oh, come on, stop joking. Ryan said this with a laugh. I was appalled. Why does he insist on thinking I'm infertile? Shall we leave this place? Nathan suggested, looking at me. Sarah also looked uneasy. Yes, let's go. It's upsetting to even see them. Oh, really? Then a seat's going to free up here. Hey, come on over. As we headed to the exit, a girl who looked about high school age approached somewhat plumply. Ah, I see, that must be the child who was in Alyssa's belly back then. As I passed by the girl, I thought this fleetingly. Let's forget about this place and eat somewhere nearby. Yes, let's enjoy some drinks properly this time. We checked our map. That's when it happened. Ms. Anderson, the same girl, shouted as she ran towards me, panting. I'm Megan, your daughter. I have something very important to tell you. She was desperate to get her point across. And that was the first step that would change our fate. 6 months later, I was visiting a certain building. My destination was a company on an upper floor. Excuse me, I'm Gina Anderson, scheduled to meet with Mr. Owen, the sales director. Thank you for waiting, Ms. Anderson. The receptionist began, then paused, looking surprised. Could it be Ms. Holmes? Mr. Owen, the sales director, called me by my maiden name. Indeed, this was the company where I used to work. Yes, it's been a while, Mr. Owen. I smiled at my former boss. So, you're moving into the tenant space downstairs? Yes, it's my store. Oh. Wow. Mr. Owen exaggerated his surprise a bit. I'm really sorry about back then. I couldn't do anything. Mr. Owen, you were in a different department at that time. And I don't think you could have stopped those tactless people. Yeah, that's true. But I feel bad about the unpleasant experiences you had. I was his boss, after all. Just then, Ryan, who seemed to have returned from a sales call, entered the floor. What? Why are you here? Did you come because you ran into me the other day? I just silently watched Ryan making his light-hearted comments. Does he realize his boss is nearby? Hey, you're not thinking about getting back together with me, are you? Hey, what are you saying? Mr. Owens said this, calming Ryan down. It seemed that Ryan finally realized I was with his boss. He quickly apologized. Ms. Anderson is here today for a business discussion. A business discussion? At that point, I spoke up to the surprised Ryan. Remember the tenant space on the first floor that's been vacant for a while? Oh, yeah. My store will be moving in there. Ryan looked puzzled. Wait a minute. Isn't that space supposed to be taken by that famous coffee chain? Right, Mr. Owen? I turned the conversation over to Mr. Owen. Yes, that's right. Everyone's been looking forward to that store moving in. So what, you joined the sales department of that chain? No. I paused and then continued. It's my store. Ryan made an even more confused face. Hey, Ryan, I don't know what you're misunderstanding. But didn't I tell you that today's visitor is Ms. Anderson, the owner of that chain? The owner? He exclaimed, looking back and forth between Mr. Owen and me, sweat forming on his forehead. Look, Ryan. Today is strictly about business. Don't be rude. Sorry about that, Ms. Anderson. No worries. Although today is about business. I actually wanted everyone here to try our coffee. As soon as I said this, the entire floor reacted. Wait, are you treating us to coffee from that shop? The young office lady was quick to react. Yes, that's right. I hope you will become our most valued customers. and I look forward to a long relationship with all of you. Today, I'd like to offer a little preview before we open. Please feel free to visit our store later. Is that okay with you, Mr. Owen? I looked at him. Yes, let's gladly accept the invitation. Let's all go down. Then, almost everyone on the floor, except those who stayed behind on duty, descended together. Welcome, said the manager of the new store, greeting. Looking forward to working with you, the waiting staff bowed in unison to greet the employees. Please, everyone, go ahead, I said. And the employees began to find their seats with youthful eagerness. Our coffee isn't particularly unique in itself. It's more affordable and simpler than a certain famous coffee shop known for its lavish toppings. And what we sell are straightforward menus and delicious meals. You can have a takeaway lunch if you wish, and for dinner, when you're willing to spend a bit more for something tasty. That's the kind of menu that made our first store flourish. After prospering, I trained staff and expanded our stores. And now I'm the president of a coffee chain with an annual revenue of $50 million. Well, how about this table over here for you folks? I invited Mr. Owen, Ryan, and a few others to a table somewhat apart from the rest. Then, a few people got up there. What? Ryan was surprised by their presence. Wait a minute, Megan, why are you here? Why? Well, Megan snickered through her nose and continued. Because I'm a guest today, too. But, isn't this place only for staff and related persons right now? Ryan hurriedly responded. But I'm a related person today, too. Oh, and by the way, Dad. Actually, my real father is here, too. Ryan seemed not to understand his daughter's words immediately. Megan ignored her father's confused look and continued. Let me introduce him. This is Mr. Ted Morris, my real father. Ryan looked even more baffled. I guess you wouldn't understand, Dad. We need one more guest to come here. With that, Megan turned towards the display window. Through it, a woman was looking around and quickly walking towards us. It was Alyssa, dressed as youthfully as when we reunited 6 months ago. Alyssa hurriedly opened the door and said, Megan, Megan, as she rushed over. Look, the other guest has arrived. Mom, this way, Megan said in a calm tone. Alyssa turned toward us and quickly approached, then suddenly looked shocked. Megan, why are you Ted? Alyssa asked with a trembling voice. Why? Because he's my father, too, Megan replied, standing firm before her stunned mother. Ryan seemed to finally understand the situation. Hey, Alyssa, do you know anything about this? Do you have any connection with this man? I don't know him. I don't know this man at all. While shaking her head vigorously, Alyssa tried to leave, but Nathan and I stopped her. Since you've come all this way, how about a cup of coffee? I suggested, offering Alyssa a seat and asking the staff to bring coffee. Right, the coffee here has been very popular recently. You really should have at least one cup before you go, Megan said, practically forcing her mother to sit down. What a brave young lady, only 16 years old. Yes, that day, Megan chased after us and brought up her concerns. The reason was, she had heard that I was once the wife of her father. When we sat down again at the cafe, Megan's consultation was this. Someone claiming to be her real father had come to her. I heard that Ms. Anderson divorced my dad because I was born. From whom? From Grandma, my former mother-in-law. Did she really need to tell her granddaughter such things? It was very like her, I thought. Did you talk about this with anyone else? I asked her that, but she replied, I haven't talked to anyone. Is it okay to talk to me about such an important matter, almost a stranger? Didn't you talk to your mom? It's fine. I don't trust my mom, especially when it comes to relationships with men. Megan stated this bluntly. Because I can't trust my mom, I thought maybe this person could really be my real dad. She was referring to Ted Morris, with whom we were sitting today. At first, she spoke with doubt, but it seems she became convinced by the gifts he mentioned. Ever since I was little, my mom would suddenly give me expensive clothes or accessories. But only when my dad was away on business trips. As a child, she just felt happy to receive these special gifts. But as she grew older, she began to sense something was off. During a conversation with Mr. Morris, she asked if he had ever sent her gifts. Mr. Morris immediately smiled, pleased, asking if she had received them. Further questioning revealed that Mr. Morris remembered the contents and timing of those gifts well, and they matched exactly with Megan's memories. So I asked for a DNA test with him. When I heard this, I thought she was a very brave girl to initiate such a matter. But saying such things, what do you think about your dad and mom? I don't care about my dad. He hardly ever comes home. And I don't know if it's because of work or something else. Ah, so Ryan had become an indifferent parent after all, despite using the presence of children as a reason to divorce me. Just as I thought this, Megan's next words surprised me. As for my mom, I'm not sure if they're dating, but there's a man she likes who isn't my dad. Just the other day, they came home together in a taxi. Her words sounded bitterly ironic. But you came to the cafe with your family recently, didn't you? That was just a show, dragged there under the guise of a family outing by my dad. In contrast, your family seemed happy. She said this with a touch of sadness. Excuse me for asking, but are you sure Sarah isn't your stepdaughter? Absolutely not. This child is my own. I firmly said this, embracing Sarah. Then at that time, my dad was really rude to you, wasn't he? I've always heard about it. Yes. In the past, your father and grandmother pushed me into divorce. But after I remarried, I had this child immediately and have been living happily ever since. I had completely forgotten about your family, to be honest. I couldn't even remember their faces right away. Is that so? I'm envious. Hearing this made me want to help her. It seemed that their family was still twisted in some way. Over the past 6 months, I attended meetings between Mr. Morris and Megan. And ultimately, we arranged this meeting. It's been a really long time, Alyssa. Mr. Morris said this with a smile. I don't know anything about you. Alyssa said this in a rush. Well, I might have changed a lot too. But DNA doesn't change. Then Mr. Morris presented the DNA test results to Ryan and Alyssa. Both took the report and looked at it intently. What they saw confirmed that Megan was not related to Ryan as a parent. But she was almost certainly Mr. Morris's daughter. Upon understanding this, Ryan suddenly looked at Alyssa, his face turning pale. Alyssa, seeing his expression, panicked. No, this is a fake, a forgery. Then you should test as many times as you need. Though I think it will be the same no matter how many times you do it. In fact, here are the results from several tests. He casually produced more documents, presumably from another facility. Alyssa then lunged at Megan. How could you do this? What are you talking about? Where did you come from today, Mom? What are you talking about? Megan then rummaged through her bag, pulled out her smartphone, and started doing something on it. Soon, she turned the screen towards Alyssa. I got this sent to me. Displayed were images of Alyssa entering and leaving a hotel with another man. This must be a fake picture. It has to be. No, it's not. How can you say that? I am saying that because I want to take this child from you guys. You can't do that. Alyssa exclaimed. I can if this parent-child relationship is proven. Also, hey, Ryan, can you really endure knowing she has been deceiving you about your paternity? Ryan choked up. Cuckoldry, you say? At his voice, the nosy office ladies around started whispering. Yes, I intentionally invited company staff here to expose this turmoil. Mr. Owen intervened, trying to calm the office ladies, and approached us. Ryan, what in the world is going on here? I don't understand myself. I would like to know too. Sweat glistened on Ryan's forehead. But Ryan, you left Ms. Anderson to marry your current wife. And now you're causing trouble at home again? That's not very fitting for someone of your age and position. What do you mean? Ryan looked around frantically, and suddenly, he shouted, Stop looking at me. In reality, no one was openly staring at him. Everyone was sneakily glancing at him. But for Ryan, those felt like piercing gazes. What is going on? What should we do? Alyssa, seeing her suddenly distraught husband, also showed signs of agitation. Well, it's time for you to come forward. It's your turn. Mr. Morris signaled, and a man from a distant table approached. This is the lawyer I have hired. I am ready to dispute the recognition and custody of the child. What about you? Ryan was lost for words, frozen on the spot. And Mr. Morris continued to press him relentlessly. Is there something wrong? You have been raising another man's child all this time. Doesn't that bother you? It bothers me, yes, it does. But if we didn't have children, my mother would. Ah, that's right, I exclaimed without thinking. You've always been weak to your mother, haven't you? The murmurs around us seemed to grow a little louder. I could hear office ladies whispering, so Ryan was a mama's boy, huh? Megan, what do you want to do? You won't betray me, your father, right? Ryan's voice was desperate, and Megan tilted her head, contemplating. Honestly, I don't really care either way. Ryan seemed genuinely shocked by her words. Perhaps he did love his daughter in his own way. That made her indifference all the more piercing. You know, Dad, you're just too oblivious. Not just about Mom, but about me too. What do you mean? I mean, I've been meeting with this dad here for over 6 months. You didn't know anything, did you? I knew you weren't interested in me. Maybe because you were busy with work. But not even noticing Mom's affair? What were you working for? Sweat began to trickle down Ryan's forehead to his cheeks. Now, you shouldn't say that. It was Mr. Morris who calmed the situation. But I get it. Even if I disappeared, this dad wouldn't run around for me, but for Grandma. You always say, oh, you did well in school, Grandma will be happy. Or being smart must run in our family, never mentioning Mom's side of the family. Alyssa turned away from her daughter, clearly upset. So, Dad, you wanted a child just for Grandma's sake, right? What do you say? Ryan was at a loss for words. Megan looked a bit sad and said to Mr. Morris, See, this is what he's like. At that moment, Alyssa suddenly shouted, Megan, what are you saying? Dad has been working hard every day for us. And Mom, you're the one who's been betraying him without any trouble, aren't you? You didn't notice either, right? Well, it makes sense. I wasn't home much. And when I brought it up, Mr. Morris here confirmed it. Confirmed. Yes, replied the lawyer. I was asked by Mr. Morris to investigate your affair. We hired a detective agency and gathered solid evidence. Those photos earlier are just a part of it. Sigh. What a mess. Mr. Owen sighed as he watched the chaos unfold. To think you'd stir up all this at once. Ryan, you were excellent at your job, but you can't even keep your family together. No, but that's not. It's not my fault. Ryan's voice grew weaker. Mr. Morris pressed further. So, what will you do? As I said earlier, I am ready to fight. As he spoke, Ryan staggered and then collapsed. Call an ambulance, call an ambulance. The scene erupted into chaos. It seemed Ryan couldn't handle everything that had suddenly come to light. It can't be helped. Well, let's talk about this slowly, Mr. Morris said kindly. Then suddenly, Alyssa turned to Mr. Morris and snapped. You've really made it, haven't you? Using lawyers and detectives. You've come a long way from back then. That's true. Mr. Morris responded as if it were obvious. Because I got rid of a gold-digging curse like you. I now have better finances, a better job, and a wonderful wife. Hearing this, Alyssa's shoulders slumped right there. I'm sorry for causing a scene. Please enjoy your time. I smiled at the office ladies who were curiously looking over. Soon after, Ryan and Alyssa ended up divorcing. The former mother-in-law was furious with Alyssa. There were two reasons. One was obviously the cuckolding, but another was that tests revealed that her beloved son, Ryan, was infertile. Ryan's failure to investigate this himself had infuriated his mother. After the storm settled, he seemed to age all at once. He even began to show early signs of dementia. It became clear that he would need care. Ryan, having caused family strife in his youth and now again, was criticized for his lack of managerial skills, and was pushed into a less demanding role by Mr. Owen. But honestly, that menial job was probably all he could handle now. His mental health had deteriorated after the shocks. Having always believed he was right, he was shattered by the revelation that I was not infertile, that he was the one without fertility, and most of all, that his daughter whom he thought loved him had easily written him off. All these things had snapped what had been his confident demeanor in the social sphere. After the divorce, Alyssa tried to go to the man she had an affair with, but he desperately claimed it was a one-night stand, that he didn't know she was married, or that he didn't know her real age, and managed to escape. It turns out Alyssa had been lying about her age by 10 years. When she told him her real age, the man's reaction was nauseating, according to the lawyer. Once she realized she had been abandoned, Alyssa tried to turn to her parents, but they refused her, and she was left with nowhere to go. After that, Alyssa simply vanished. What could a woman who had been a housewife all her life, sneaking around her mother-in-law and having affairs, do? Well, she should just sink as low as she goes. As for Megan, she was taken in by her biological father, Ted, and his wife. They pleaded with her to live with them for at least a little while, even though she was almost an adult. This was because Ted's wife had been unable to have children. Over 6 months, Megan had gotten to know her and they had grown close. She deserved a happy life, free of any wrongdoing. Since then, and perhaps because of the little scandal, the news store flourished. We also became good friends with the company upstairs. To the office ladies, the wife who was divorced and fought to become the president of a chain store was something of an aspiration. It makes me blush to hear it, but I think how times have changed. And occasionally, Sarah, my daughter, and Megan exchange messages. It's a strange twist of fate, but children can make friends in such unexpected ways. Even though their mothers were almost enemies, the kids themselves had nothing to do with it. Nathan looks at them with a warm expression. As I cherish this family, I plan to keep working hard and keep focusing on my happiness and my home.